Filmmaker Pamela Tom worked on Tyrus for 17 years, and the hard work has paid off. The film is receiving a lot of praise from audiences and critics alike. Mainly sat down with Tom to find out more about Tyrus Wong and the making of the film.
When I first met Tyrus, obviously my introduction to him was through his art, through Bambi. But after having met him, and myself being a fifth-generation Chinese American, I felt the story of his experience as an immigrant, a Chinese immigrant in America, was equally important. And so I wanted to tell the story of an artist, but through the lens of a Chinese immigrant. And you have to remember, Tyrus came here in 1919. The Chinese Exclusion Act was in place, and his first experience in America was being detained in Angel Island, which was a detention center. So here was Tyrus at 9 years old, detained at Angel Island by himself for over a month.
The immigration inspectors had these interrogations. And the goal of the inspectors was to trick a person to make a mistake so that you could just automatically be deported.
They ask you about your village, who lived next to you, and your right-hand side, your left hand, how many windows you had in the house.
He was a very resilient person, and he was not a bitter person, but I think he recognized very early on that the Chinese were not welcome, that you had to really be careful, you had to work twice as hard, you had to kind of sort of pick your battles, sort of lay low when you needed to. Not to say that he didn't have a lot of, spit and vinegar and was a really feisty guy.
One time, we walked as a family up into the town of Sunland, and I remember a car driving by and they yelled out some sort of racial something. I remember my dad just turning around and giving them the finger.
Let's talk about Bambi,
okay,
because that is a film that he worked on that everybody credits now, now that the story's being told, that he really set the tone and the look of this entire film.
It was like a perfect storm. Tyrus was fresh out of art school. He had gotten married and he needed to find a job. And like he says in the film, well, you're Chinese, you have to support your wife. So what were the options for a fine artist during that time? The studios. He was in Hollywood. He was in Los Angeles. Bambi was in pre-production. So he got the book. I mean, this is how resourceful Tyrus was. He picked up the book, took it home, read it, and drew some tiny little sketches of deer in the forest and brought it back to work and showed it to the art director.
After Walt saw Tyrus Wong's sketches for Bambi, he gave the go-ahead to hire him.
Thank you, Walt.
It's only really happened a few other times where the entire studio will cleave to one artist's style.
You could actually see brushstrokes on the screen.
He is legendary and constantly on the minds of everyone here.
These are the art forms where you're not necessarily recognized. You do the job, you get your paycheck, whatever, and that's it. But I'm really glad that Disney has recognized them to the degree that they have. They made him a Disney legend, and they've honored him with a retrospective at the Disney Family Museum, and everybody within the Disney and animation community knows who Tyrus is and is influenced by him.
But it took a while. He didn't get that recognition until much later in his life, right?
That's correct. Probably not until his 90s.
90s?
Yeah, yeah.
So when he started getting the recognition, how did he feel about it?
Tyrus is very modest, and whenever there was an award that was being given to him or an event, he'd always say, "Whoa, what's all this about? Well, why are they honoring me?" And it's not false modesty. He really was like, what's the big deal? But I think that despite that, I think there must have been some great satisfaction knowing that he was recognized, and that he had made it as an artist, which was his dream all along.
I think he's left an incredible legacy. And I'm so glad that you were able to tell it in this way so more people would know about his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for making the film.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share his story. I can never stop talking about Tyrus Wong.